Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Monday, January 20th, 2020, and exactly a year from today, we will have either a new president or President Donald Trump will be re-inaugurated today, in a year from now. So it should be pretty interesting. I am still in disbelief that we are in 2020. Had that moment of realization again because I've been covering these elections, 2020 election predictions since 2017, been interested in politics since like 2010 for really. But you know, I mean, we're finally here, but today's video is not about the presidential election. It's just pretty convenient that it's fallen on to this date. But today we're going to be discussing the 2020 Senate elections. I have not made a video yet this year, this decade actually, not really, but discussing the Senate election. So pretty much we're going to be going through, this is not going to be exactly quote unquote my prediction. This is where I think that a lot of these races are going to end up landing in. A lot of these states aren't too contested. The Democrats haven't really recruited the best candidates for a lot of these races. They didn't find a good Democrat for states like Montana, which could have actually been competitive this election season. And there's definitely going to be a top Dem at the top of the ticket nationwide. And a lot of these Democrats, if they are able to get their base together, could inspire a lot of these Democrats to come out and vote. And in a way, they could possibly get close in the United States Senate. I'm not seeing a pathway to the majority just yet. Things could change. We haven't officially hit primary season in terms of actual primaries occurring, but still need to take a look at some of these races. And some of them are very easy to characterize. You know, a lot of these quote-unquote safe states, which typically they don't change too much. There were some safe districts in the House of Representatives races back in 2016 and 2018 that actually ended up flipping for either party. It was weird. 2018 definitely had a lot more because it was a wave election year. For example, as we go down over to Oklahoma, Oklahoma's 5th congressional district was characterized as safe for the Republicans. The Democrat ended up winning there anyway. But pretty much a lot of these states are already considered safe. They may not have been safe back in 2014. They actually did have some Democratic incumbents, for example, states like Arkansas, but they are now considered safe. Montana, I would also agree that this one is now considered a safe state, mainly because Steve Bullock has refused to run for the United States Senate. Could be his ego. It could be the Democrats in Montana pushing him away, waiting for another race to come up. Who knows? But as of right now, Montana is off of the list for the Democratic Party for it even being competitive. So we've pretty much covered all of them. We have West Virginia, Wyoming. We have, I'm trying to see if I've missed any states, Alaska. There shouldn't be any other areas. South Carolina, Lindsey Graham. There are some polling firms that do show South Carolina to be a little bit closer. At the end of the day, at most, I would say it's a likely Republican state. I'm going to actually characterize it as likely just because we aren't too sure yet. The numbers are a little wobbly for Lindsey Graham, but at the end of the day, it will end up being likely, if not safe, for the GOP. Tennessee, currently an open seat. Not going to see a Phil Bredesen type scenario where we see a contested race. The only reason why 2018 was contested, if you don't know, was because Phil Bredesen left office with one of the highest approval ratings in the country as a Democrat from Tennessee. He even lost, I think, by around double digits there in 2018. So not looking good for Democrats. It never looks good for Democrats in Tennessee. Should not have cut it off there. But some other states that are considered safe for the Democratic Party, I mean, they aren't alone here. We have states like Delaware, obviously, Illinois. What's interesting, though, I looked at, if any of you guys are in AP classes, I looked at an FRQ from AP Lang exam a long time ago. It was a synthesis essay, but it had Senator Dick Durbin in there as one of the documents, but it was from such a long time ago. I think it was like 1986 or something around then. But man, he's been in there for a really long time. Didn't even realize that. May not have been senator, not so sure, but he was definitely mentioned there. Massachusetts and New Jersey, obviously Cory Booker. I don't know if any of you guys watched the New York Times whole endorsement thing. I did not. I just watched tiny bits of it on Twitter. I will go ahead and actually watch it. They did end up endorsing Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, which is very interesting. But pretty much, I mean, I am actually very interested in how they made that decision. There were a couple of areas that I actually think were very good for all of the candidates. Obviously, they're not going to show anything negative. But Cory Booker had a very heartfelt moment when he discussed what broke his heart. Democrat or Republican, what he had said was very touching, very moving. There were a lot of things that I saw from these Democratic candidates that aren't exactly publicized by the mainstream media for obvious reasons. It doesn't get ratings, makes sense. But I just think that it is interesting just seeing a humane side of politicians that we don't typically see when they're out there, whether it's on the debate stage or the campaign trail. It's really all just robotic movement. But it is nice to see them actually have somewhat of a human touch to them. But New Mexico, this one, I'm actually going to consider it safe. It is an open seat, but I don't think the Democrats are going to lose New Mexico in the presidential election by any means. I think it's actually going to be a likely state, possibly safe depending on who the nominee is, but likely state for right now. So I do actually think that in the Senate race, it's actually going to be a safe Democratic state that actually ties up the race. Virginia, I'm going to go ahead and throw that one in as a solid Democratic state. The Republicans really have no candidate there. Doesn't make sense for them to have a candidate there. It'd be wasted money. Obviously, they're going to run a candidate, but I mean an actual candidate that could make this competitive, because they definitely don't want to be taking away money from areas that they need it in, for example, Alabama, and distribute it over to Virginia when it's really, in reality, not a winnable race. When we move over, that puts the Republicans at 42 seats, the Democrats at 43. That leaves a total of 15 quote-unquote toss-up races. Actually, I don't know why I did not consider Texas a solid Republican state. I think that was a force of habit from 2018. But no, Texas is definitely a solid GOP state. We do have likely states, which are pretty much a 5 to 15%. Obviously, that's a large range, but I usually indicate whether I think it's going to be on the low end of the spectrum. But safe is anything above 15%. Wouldn't exactly say anything above 10% is considered safe, because we've seen races swing by a lot larger than that margin. But Mississippi, I'm going to say Cindy Hyde-Smith takes this one. It's going to be a likely state. It was an 8% margin back in 2018 with the special election. It might not have been 18, it might have been 19, but I think it was 18. But that one I still think is going to be likely. There is a very large African-American population. Even if they do in full force, it's not going to be a Democratic state. Going over to Alabama, we're not going to touch just yet. Georgia, both of these, to be honest, the Democrats really are lacking in Georgia. They really could be running top-notch candidates. I mean, the best they have is Jon Ossoff in one of the races. And the open race really doesn't have too many quote-unquote strong candidates. Stacey Abrams refused to run for the United States Senate there. I think that the Democrats are giving up an opportunity to possibly make Georgia have 2 Democratic senators for the next couple years, whichever, until there's a full race, I guess. But Georgia, this isn't exactly a safe Republican state. This, not barely, but in comparison to some other states, barely went to Donald Trump compared to where it should have. And in 2018, it was very close in their governor election. So they're missing an opportunity for themselves there. For other likely Democratic states, to be honest, I would say Minnesota would be considered a likely Democratic state. New Hampshire, I'm going to say likely. I know a lot of you guys want this in the safe column. I'm going to say likely just for right now. But definitely could be safe depending on the circumstance. Maine is not a Democratic state. Keep that in mind. Made that mistake last time. The Republicans, I do think that actually, I don't think any of these other races are going to be considered likely. At most, I would say Iowa would be considered likely. Actually, the Democrats aren't focusing too much on a lot of these Senate races, to be completely honest. I think they do have a mildly strong candidate in Iowa, but again, it is Joni Ernst, and she is a pretty strong woman, and I think that at the end of the day, Iowa's going to end up being a Republican state, most likely on the presidential level as well. But that puts the Democrats at 45, Republicans at 47. Mitch McConnell, I mean, can you name a more hated senator besides Susan Collins? But Kentucky, man, this has been a topic of discussion forever. He's been in the Senate forever. I think more than around 3 times my lifetime, sometime around then. But I mean, man, that guy's been in there. 6-year term, and he's running for re-election. I mean, this isn't a Democrat or Republican issue, but I mean, gosh, that's his entire life. But Kentucky, every single time this election comes up, it gets close. If you remember, 2008, very close. 2014, not so much because of the Republican wave, but he definitely had a woman who gave him a run for his money. And now he has Amy McGrath, who, by comparison to other candidates, I think Rocky Adkins, pretty sure that's his name. Both of them are pretty strong candidates. One outweighs the other. I'm not going to say who. But that race should be pretty interesting depending on whoever the nominee is. I mean, I'm looking forward to seeing debates between those two. But I would actually consider that one a lean Republican state, while I would consider states like Michigan and Colorado lean Democratic states. Now, Colorado is actually a flip. Colorado is a split state right now, one Democrat, one Republican. This would end up with 2 Democrats. Cory Gardner was elected back in 2014, and not against Tom Udall, another Udall. Mark? I don't know. Could be wrong. Could have been Tom. I don't know. I flipped them. New Mexico, Colorado. But Colorado, Democratic state, that puts the Democrats at 47, the Republicans at 48. I'm seeing Mark Kelly pull out in Arizona. I mean, we're looking at a woman who was rejected by voters once and will likely be rejected twice. I mean, she was put in there after losing a Senate bid. I mean, that's such, in my honest opinion, a dumb move. If she wasn't able to win before, a circumstance where it's a presidential election, maybe it looks a little bit more appealing because it was a narrow margin, but this state continuously is getting more Democratic as we move on. 2016 was a little warning sign like, hey, Donald Trump is not liked here. Don't throw in a full-fledged candidate for 2018. That's exactly what they did. She wasn't exactly full-fledged, but she definitely is now. She's definitely rallying behind the president more than she did on the campaign trail in 2018. And now, heading towards 2020, demographics still aren't in favor of the Republicans. In fact, they are worse off for them. I do think the Democrats are probably going to take this one in the Senate race. The presidential election, it may actually end up being in their favor. And it should be pretty interesting because the last time that I went to a Democrat was actually Bill Clinton in 1996. It was a close margin, still a Democratic state regardless. But Alabama, North Carolina, and Maine, right now, Tom Tillis, he is a Republican incumbent. There is this whole thing about how North Carolina incumbents never got reelected in the Senate. I think 2016 was the first time in a long time that a Republican incumbent was reelected to the United States Senate. Not saying that history has any determination on what's going to happen in this race, but I think that the Democrats are definitely going to pour a lot of money in there because they did lose this state in 2016. They do have, I guess, that whole redistricting thing to worry about in the House, so they're going to pour money in there and subsequently are going to pour money in the Senate race as well. But also, it's a vulnerable state. There is a very large swinging population here. Still leans Republican, but still a swing population. That is interesting. Kansas, I'm actually going to say, is a lean Republican state. That puts them at 50. If Mike Pence and Donald Trump win the election, this ends up being a Republican majority. But besides that, Kansas has an open race right now. I'm actually going to say that this one is a lean state. We could see an independent come swoop in here, possibly a Democrat. If you remember 2018, actually a Democrat won the governor race here. They currently have a Democratic incumbent governor. Just keep that in mind. So it is possible for a Democrat to win statewide in the state of Kansas. As for Alabama, we're not seeing too much luck for Doug Jones here. To be honest, I'm going to say tilt GOP. Still possibility for the Democrats to win, obviously. And Maine, I'm going to say tilt GOP as well. But Susan Collins is progressively more and more hated in her own home state. I mean, she was loved by everyone. And it looks like after that Kavanaugh thing, it's just been dipping and dipping and dipping. And as she continues to side with President Trump in a Democratic state, it's never a good sign. So this actually wraps up my 2020 Senate first ever, take a look. It's not exactly a prediction, but it gives me a general idea and gives you a general idea of where I believe that these races are going to stand. I know a lot of you guys may not agree with some of these calls. I understand that, so make sure to comment down below what you agree or disagree with. Again, I am not doing this because I am affiliating with one political party or the other. This is my genuine, honest prediction for the United States Senate. It's an overall net gain of 1 for the Democratic Party. Not much changes, but again, if you're looking at those tilt and lean states, those really can go back and forth as we progress through the primary and general election season. So thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. I am, in fact, working on a 2020 Democratic primary election night because I actually want to get one of those out before we hit Iowa. But again, it's going to take a little bit of time because I have to do the percentages and which delegates and then the super delegate count because it is going to be a contested convention. Spoiler alert. But yeah. So again, thank you guys for watching this video, and I will see you all tomorrow.